There's going to be, we're going to have to entertain a lot of things of that nature. Wildfires is just something that, if you go back in time, this has been happening for many years. Going back 20 years, you can go back further than that, actually, and you'll see the beginnings of these trends occurring. And it has really become noticeable within the past few years, which is why you see record-breaking temperatures every single year. And it just keeps going and going. All these issues that we're having here in the States on the West Coast with California and their wildfires, and the flooding that you see on the East Coast from as far as Texas to Florida, all the way up. It's kind of like a strip that goes up all the way from Texas all the way up into around New York and those New England states. And everything that is happening in California is pushing towards the east. So you have a lot of drought, and you have a lot of storms going on the east side. So you have a split here. And what this is going to do is going to, if it keeps going this way, if it continues, it's going to eventually change the topography. So some places will be underwater, some places will be flooded, not really fully submerged, but just you're going to be stepping in. If you stay there, you're going to be stepping in puddles of water everywhere. So it's going to be like at least a foot high or so. A good example of what you probably see a lot of this happening is Florida. So Florida is one of those states where you kind of have to say, okay, it's getting all this flooding every year. The storms are relentless. It's just back to back. And on the East Coast, it's kind of the opposite. The heat has been intense, over 100 degrees on most days. And there's not much. I mean, there are people who are exiting those places where the way of living is changing. It's becoming so that it's almost uninhabitable. The only thing that makes it habitable is the fact that there are people still there, maintaining the infrastructure in certain places. But along with those wildfires are food shortages, loss of crops. We have, I recently gave an example of how the almond trees in California they're going around shaking all the almonds off the trees to make sure that the trees don't die. But at the same time, they lose all those crops. So, it takes about a good, I think, 3 to 5 years before those trees can produce any fruit. So there's probably no almonds left. If there's any, there's not going to be for a while. Situations like that are going to start occurring all over the globe. What you're going to see is vegetation that used to grow in one place. It won't grow there anymore. It'll start growing somewhere else. But you'll start to see changes in your local vegetation wherever you are. The sun is doing the same thing it's been doing. It's not, I wouldn't say it's heating up, but the amount of radiation that is coming from exotic sources, that's having an effect on the sun, which is having an effect on the planet and the magnetosphere and all the radiation going into the poles. And you're going to have like these pockets where, or should I say openings, where you're going to get a lot more of the sun's radiation getting through than being filtered. So, in wide open fields and in certain places and forests, after you have so much drought and you have the right conditions, you're talking about lightning striking certain areas in these climates that are like kind of, you know, like in countries like India, where you have that condition where you can have, you know, extreme lightning strikes and powerful lightning strikes that can start fires. The heat is the main thing. That's pretty much what's causing a lot of issues right now. It probably get to the point where in the shade, it's going to be a lot cooler than it is in direct sunlight. You'll notice the difference. You can actually, if you drive around, you can actually notice the difference. If you ever driven in a car and stuck your arm outside the window and just let the sun hit it, you can feel the intense heat coming off of the sun's rays, right? You know, as you're sitting in the, you know, the shade of the interior of the car. So people are going to start to notice a big difference. That's going to become more noticeable as time goes on. I think that's actually prophesized. I think I recently read something that was you know what it was? It was the Book of Enoch. I read a verse from the Book of Enoch, and it was talking about, it was an observation, but it was actually, if you look at that verse, I can't remember the verse right now, but if you were to go, it's in the first section. And if you go to look at that verse, he describes how in the shade, you were cool from the sun, but you're not able to step out into the rocks because the rocks are too hot from the sun's heat. So it's a similar thing to what I just described. So what we're going to be looking at, we're going to be just looking at some changes. It's not nothing we can't survive or get through, but I think what people are going to start to realize is that wherever they are, they may be facing some environmental changes that may or may not affect them. People can go through seasons, you know. Some people live in, like I live in a climate where it goes from, you know, pretty dry summers, around 90 degrees or so at the most, 95 maybe at the most. But it goes to winter, and it's winter for like a good 6 months. Last year, we got away with hardly having any winter. I don't even know if it really snowed here. I think it was just snow that was blown this way. But as you can see, you know, things are changing. It's almost as if the axis of the earth, or should I say the topography, is shifting to where the northern, like the northern areas are shifting southward, and some of the southern areas are shifting up northward. So you have this kind of rotation of the earth, right, where you have the equator is actually going this way instead of going across like that, you know. Antarctica is melting a lot because they're getting heat coming from the atmosphere, and then they're getting heat coming from underneath. So now there's a lot of volcanic activity, and you got to remember, like, a lot of the radiation that goes into the poles, so it's getting a lot of that radiation as an effect to that too. The magnetosphere, once the radiation hits the magnetosphere, it redirects it right into the poles. Yeah, that there's a buildup there for some reason. There's been a buildup. I guess the Earth is not exhausting a lot of that energy. It's not putting out. It's not venting enough. And so what happens is it just gets built up inside. You know, just like anything under pressure, it has to pop. Radiation pouring into the poles is affecting temperatures, you know, beneath the crust. It's causing a lot of issues. It's causing magma to flow, which is causing the heat. You know, fortunately, we haven't had to deal with too many, I would say, outside catalysts for the fires, such as, like, you know, small meteorites. which I expected to see, but you know, fortunately, that hadn't occurred to a level where you know could cause panic. But that might be a concern later on if we start to see it. When you start to see it, I don't think that's going to stop anytime soon. That'll probably continue and progress and get worse and worse until it gets to the point where we'll have to have certain things put in place. You know, like we had to have certain things put in place for this pandemic. So there'll be certain things put in place for that. And it'll just keep going on and on. There'll be certain things that will be coming up. And we get to look forward to the government instituting plans for each and everything that happens. So yeah, it's definitely a time that you have to kind of, you don't want to, when you look at these things that are happening globally, I don't look at anything that's happening today as coincidence. It's more or less, oh, you know, okay, similar things are happening around the globe. That means there's a major shift occurring. You know, it's a global shift. It's happening politically, you know, across almost all nations, I believe, especially now. And that's going to continue. All these wars and rumors of wars are going to continue. They're going to escalate. And there's the paranormal side. There's the spiritual aspect to all of this that comes into play gradually. I think more and more people are going to notice things that they probably didn't think were a part of it. And we'll see what happens later on.